This will sound very strange, but the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima by bombers that departed the island of Okinawa, and the first Nazi concentration camp, Dachau, north of Munich, and the Pilgrims' crossing of the Atlantic, and the emergency evacuation on Okinawa Island in 2023, as well as the planes that got frozen in place due to a record 44 inches of ice and snow in Munich in Germany in December of 2023, and the largest peacetime evacuation in the UK after a 500-pound World War II bomb was discovered in Plymouth, England, and the Pilgrims' crossing of the Atlantic, and the Plymouth colony, and the explosive that was detonated outside of the office of the Attorney General of Alabama just days after the Supreme Court of Alabama ruled that embryos are human life, is all part of a prophecy from the righteous Christian God of the Bible that is predicting that dirty bombs will explode in Manhattan, New York City, and there will be a large-scale evacuation from Manhattan Island on March 27th, 2024. The date that this video is posted proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does this time-stamped email and forensic notes PDF document. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is only being explained on this channel. The full intended meaning of God's prophetic signs cannot be properly understood without their context and connections to other prophetic signs. God's big picture of signs is an interconnected web. It is through these connections between related prophetic signs that God is telling very important stories that are revealing very important knowledge. For example, it is through God's big picture of signs, patterns, and connections that he is revealing the way in which Barack Obama will become the president again, which is through the death of Vice President Kamala Harris in a plane crash. For many years, God has been painting this particular picture through his prophetic signs, and along the way he has been developing numerous trails of connected signs that are leading to the precise date that Harris is predicted to die in a plane crash. Here is a diagram that illustrates one such example among countless examples. As we can see here, God has demonstrated a number of trails of signs that led to August 24th, 2023. It was known ahead of time that there would be a prophetic sign related to the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash on August 24th. And then on this day, Vladimir Putin was the first public official to confirm that the Russian general and leader of the Wagner Group that attempted a coup of Vladimir Putin died in a plane crash, which hints at the soft coup that has been unfolding in America in recent years. In retrospect, it could have been easily predicted that the Russian general of the Wagner Group would die in a plane crash on August 24th because it was known that August 24th is 54 days before October 17th, which was another date God was pointing to ahead of time. This is why on August 24th, Trump, God's trumpet, had in 5 months been arrested for the 4th time in the 4th state. It also hinted at the number 54. God has been using in his signs the theme of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, the first black regiment to fight in the Civil War, who were known for fighting valiantly at Fort Wagner. As we can see in this diagram, the trail of signs continues on from August 24th to the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on February 24th. This is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works. And this theme of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment is an example of a story that God is telling that is extremely important. Actually, February 24th ended up being another step in the trail of signs that is leading to March 27th. The date 224 hints at 2 times 24 and hints at G 2424 in Strong's Greek Bible Concordance, which is the Greek word for the name Jesus. Greek letters are also numbers, and the numeric value of the name Jesus in Greek is equal to 888. The number 24 is 8 plus 8 plus 8. March 27th will be 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 days after the 24th of February. The name Trump in Simple English Gematria is 88, and Donald J. Trump in English Gematria is 888, which is why on February 24th, Trump won the primary for the 8th state to join the Union over the former governor of the 8th state. Trump campaigned in the capital of the 8th state on the day of Harris's third visit to the 8th state this year, which hinted at 3 8s and 888. The other prophetic signs on February 24th also revealed the number 8. This includes the S&P 500 stock market index's close for the weekend at 5,088.80. And the Boston Celtics basketball team's 8th win in a row, giving them an 8-game lead over the next team, and the dangerous basketball court storming incident after the 8th ranked Blue Devils college basketball team lost to the Deacon Demons in an upset. The prophetic significance of these prophetic signs are explained in the amazing Trump Wins 8th State video on this channel. And so on February 24th, we had 4 signs involving the number 8, which hinted at adding 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 days to February 24th to reach the date that it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on March 27th. The same is true regarding the prediction that 2 dirty bombs or a suitcase nuke will be detonated in Manhattan, New York City on March 27, 2024. Like Harris's predicted plane crash, God was also pointing to February 24th ahead of time regarding the prediction that 2 dirty bombs will be detonated in Manhattan. Likewise, the signs on February 24th revealed adding 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 days to reach the date of the predicted dirty bombs and evacuation from Manhattan Island on March 27th. The signs on February 24th included the largest peacetime evacuation in the United Kingdom in order to enable the safe removal and detonation of a recently discovered 500-pound World War II bomb. Also on February 24th, an explosive was detonated outside the office of the Attorney General of Alabama after the Alabama Supreme Court ruled 8 days before February 24th that embryos are human life. These very important signs are explained in the Alabama Obama video. God developed elaborate trails of signs that led to February 24th in order to communicate extremely important knowledge through the many different stories contained in these trails of prophetic signs. There are about 70 videos related to the predicted dirty bomb in New York City on this channel that predict that these dirty bombs would explode and there would be an evacuation from Manhattan Island on February 3rd. Each of these videos tell a different and very important story that everyone needs to know, and these stories are developed through trails of connected prophetic signs that led to February 3rd, 2024. In other words, God's prophetic signs connected to February 3rd, and then on February 3rd we received the prophetic sign that was expected in advance of February 3rd. The prophetic sign that occurred on February 3rd that was expected in advance of February 3rd was the U.S. airstrikes in Iraq and Syria in response to the drone plane attack on the U.S. Tower 22 base in Jordan. The airstrike mission for the 2 U.S. bombers took 2 times 22 hours and began on the date 2/2, February 2nd. 2 B-1B bombers were used in the airstrikes. The letter B is the second letter in the alphabet. 2 B-1B bombers hint at 2 dirty bombs in the area code 212, which is Manhattan Island. The airstrikes carried out by 2 bomber planes on the date 2/2 that were in a response to the drone attack on the Tower 22 base revealed adding 22 days from the date 2/2 to reach February 24th, the day of the 2 prophetic bomb signs, and the other signs that revealed adding 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 days to reach the date March 27th, and the date it is predicted that 2 dirty bombs will explode in the area code 212. This important bomb sign and the important stories and knowledge that God is telling that relate to this are explained in the U.S. bombers' airstrikes video. For example, the 2 paths of the 2 U.S. bombers that departed from Texas and took 44 hours to complete their mission and return to Texas point to the 2 paths of the 2 eclipses that will cross over each other 44 days after the 2 bomb signs that occurred on February 24th that were previously mentioned, when the second Great American Eclipse will first enter the U.S. through Texas. This second eclipse will be on the date April 4th, 4/8, which hints at the 48th president, who is the 44th president, who will serve a second presidency. What I am saying is that when this prediction comes to pass, you should know that you need to watch every minute of every video on this channel, including all 70 of the videos that tell the different stories from God through different trails of prophetic signs that led to February 2nd and 3rd. The reason I say February 2nd and 3rd is because God was pointing to the 24th day of the month of Shavat in the Hebrew calendar, which began at sunset on February 2nd and went until sunset on February 3rd, and the airstrikes on Iraq and Syria occurred at midnight local time on February 2nd and 3rd. Then watch the 2 U.S. bombers' airstrikes video that explains in detail the prophetic sign that occurred on February 2nd and 3rd, and how this points to the date of the predicted 2 dirty bombs in New York City on March 27th. What I am saying is that the 70 videos in which it was predicted that a dirty bomb would explode in New York City on February 2nd and 3rd are 100% correct. What I am saying is do not skip these videos that are predicting February 2nd and 3rd. They must be watched. If you do not watch these videos and learn about the important stories God has been telling, you will have missed entirely the point of this prediction that is from God for 2 dirty bomb explosions and an evacuation in Manhattan, New York City on March 27th. Believe me, I know far better than you why God is giving this prediction, and it is so that you learn the information that is contained in these 70 other videos that predicted February 2nd and 3rd. All right. Prior to February 24th, it was known that God was pointing to February 24th through his big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel. And as I just explained, the way it works is that it is a trail of signs. There are trails of prophetic signs, countless numbers of them, regarding the coming prediction of the dirty bombs that will explode in Manhattan, which will lead to a large-scale evacuation from Manhattan Island. So a big step in the trail, which was known ahead of time, was February 24th. This video will discuss the prophetic signs from God that occurred on February 24th, which therefore confirmed all of the analysis for February 24th regarding the trails of signs that were leading to February 24th, regarding the predicted dirty bombs in Manhattan and evacuation. All right, so as we can see here, this email was composed on February 25th. Today is March 22nd. It is 5 days before March 27th, the date it is predicted that the dirty bombs will explode in Manhattan. All right, so February 25th. If you are skeptical, email me and I'll forward this email to you. So let's get into some of the explanation here. So first of all, I'll explain here. The Lord was also pointing to February 24th in regards to the predicted bomb and evacuation in New York City. As explained, February 24th was 13 days after Super Bowl 58, which hinted at 13. It was all about the number 13, including the Super Bowl's number 58, which hints at 5 plus 8 equals 13. It was Swift. Okay, it was the Taylor Swift Super Bowl, and she is known for being obsessed with the number 13, and it happened to be her 13th Kansas City Chiefs game she had attended this season. And the big news story of the entire season were her attendances at the Chiefs games. All right. Furthermore, the Chiefs are 13 symbolism because the two antichrists, the two chiefs, are described in the 13th chapter of the book of Revelation. That's all explained, though, in the Taylor Swift video, which is an absolute must-watch. Okay, so the Super Bowl was 13 days before February 24th. And February 24th was Purim. Purim is associated with the number 13. This is the feast in the Hebrew calendar that commemorates the persecution of Jews in ancient Babylon, and the Jews were persecuted on the 13th days of the month. That is why the number 13 is symbolic of Purim. Okay, that's in God's signs, and I'm not sure if Jews are aware that the number 13 is symbolic of Purim, probably because of the 13th day of the month. I don't know. But anyway, I do know this, that's the case. Okay, and Purim began at sunset because Hebrew calendar dates begin at sunset and go to the following sunset. And so Purim didn't begin on February 24th. It began on February 23rd at sunset. All right, and on February 3rd, we received a Manhattan prophetic sign, which was the death of the famous owl that had escaped Central Park Zoo and flew into a building, just like the planes flew into buildings on 9/11 in Manhattan. That's explained in another video as well. Okay, so God uses records for his signs. On February 24th, 2024, on February 23rd, 2024, the largest peacetime evacuation occurred, that's a record, in the UK after a 500-pound World War II bomb was dug up and transported out to sea where it was detonated at 9:15 p.m., which was after sunset. In other words, it was on Purim. Okay? The 500-pound bomb also hints at the 500th word in Strong's Greek New Testament Concordance, which is the word meaning Antichrist. Okay? And this is a historic bomb. This is bringing back World War II into this, which was when the first nuclear bombs were dropped. In fact, they ended World War II. And we are talking about the prediction for dirty bombs, which are bombs that are conventional and explosive, but use nuclear material. That's why God is using World War II symbolism in his signs, including this World War II bomb. Because the World War II bomb, of course, was the atomic bomb. This occurred in Plymouth. 3 exclamation marks. And that is because of the coincidence of the name Plymouth, which is a recurrence of 3 instances that make it a coincidence. Plymouth, England, is from where the Pilgrims set sail, which was unplanned. Okay? They didn't plan to set sail from Plymouth. It just happened to be that the Lord brought them back to Plymouth. In fact, they were brought back to Plymouth twice. After the Speedwell, their other ship, because they originally had 2 ships, sprung leaks twice. So they brought it back to Plymouth, repaired it, and then set sail again, and it sprung leaks again. Many believe that it was sabotage. All right. So they returned to Plymouth twice because of this issue. Coincidentally, they also purchased their land deed in Virginia because they were originally headed for Virginia, except for the storm that knocked them off course. And it was a terrible, terrible experience at sea. And they were knocked way north of their course and took a lot longer than they anticipated, 66 days, in fact. And then they ended up coming to North America at Cape Cod, which, if you look at it geographically, the geography of the land looks like a giant hook, which is what was intended by God. It is a fish hook. And we are in the period of fishing for men. And America, through the spiritual founding of the Pilgrims, is God's Israel, God's chosen nation. And that he used in his big plan to spread the gospel around the world. All right. So anyway, fishing, it was amazing. So that's part of the coincidence. But back to the Plymouth coincidence. They also chose, after a long search over a few days, I forget how many days, but it was a number of days. I think it was about a month before they chose Plymouth, okay, to begin their colony. But this area named Plymouth, where they began their colony, had already been given the name Plymouth by a cartographer years before the Pilgrims arrived. So that's the third coincidence, because they didn't name the place Plymouth because they left Plymouth or because of the land deed from the Plymouth Company or anything to that effect. All 3 of these Plymouths were all coincidences. It's just demonstration of God's hand on the matter. I haven't yet figured out the prophetic significance of the name Plymouth. There may not be any, and it simply is the fact for the purpose of the 3 Plymouths just indicating God's hand upon this. Okay, well, in other words, this bomb evacuation, well, another reason for the Plymouth coincidences is for this prophetic sign that I'm speaking about right now. Yes, believe it or not, this is one of the purposes of the coincidences of Plymouth, so that I can tell you about this prophetic sign in this video. In other words, this bomb evacuation sign in Plymouth, England, is the bomb evacuation sign we were looking for. Because again, Purim, February 24th, which began at sunset February 23rd, was the date that was a step in the trail of signs leading to the predicted explosion in Manhattan and evacuation. And so therefore we would expect a relevant sign regarding this, and this is exactly it. It couldn't be more profound, really, because this points to the spiritual founding of America, which is God. Plymouth Rock is symbolic of Christ, because in the Bible, rock is symbolism for Jesus. That's the main reason, by the way, for the Plymouth coincidences. And the three of them hint at the Trinity: God, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And that's why 3 Plymouths, and that's why the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock. Now, there are some that say that Plymouth Rock is just a legend, but it is untrue. It has to be from the spiritual enemy, that belief that's somewhat modern in our time. No, the actual Plymouth Rock is actually Plymouth Rock. And we know this because one of the children that were born from the original first pilgrims, on his deathbed, at the time he was dying, people in Plymouth were planning to move the rock for some renovation to the port or the pier. And he said, that's the actual real Plymouth Rock that they landed on. So anyway, that's how we know that the rock that is considered to be Plymouth Rock today is in fact the Plymouth Rock that the Pilgrims first stepped onto, which symbolized the foundation of America being in Christ. All right, now that's why this bomb sign in Plymouth, England, because that ties it to it ties it to America through the Pilgrims and the crossing of the Atlantic. Although this prophetic bomb sign occurred in England, God did this because of a number of reasons. One, a World War II bomb, which there are none in America. So it was this World War II bomb was discovered and then had to be detonated. And as a result, there was the largest peacetime evacuation in the UK since the war. And so all of that needed to happen, but that also happened in Plymouth. If it happened in any other UK town, it perhaps wouldn't be a prophetic sign. But it is especially relevant that it occurred in Plymouth, this evacuation. It symbolizes America, in other words. Okay, there is beyond stunning confirmation that March 19th is also the date for the bomb in New York City. Okay, so March 19th was another step in the trail of signs, all right? And here's one reason why. March 19th will be, because this was written before March 19th, it was 108 days, which is 36 plus 36 plus 36 days, after December 2nd, 2023, which was another major step in the trail of signs. God was overwhelmingly pointing to this date ahead of time, and then he demonstrated the relevant signs on December 2nd, that are explained in the Okinawa Obama video, an absolute must-watch video, amazing. And those signs were also World War II signs, just like the signs I'm describing, or this one I'm describing in this video, which connected to February 24th, by the way, with exactly 9 weeks, if I recall. Anyway, I'm not going to go into more explaining that. Let's just get back to what I was saying here. 108 days. Well, why is that relevant? Okay, so March 19th, 108 days after December 2nd, was the Okinawa and Dachau concentration camp signs, both World War II signs. Okay, I searched 108 Hiroshima. Just the search in the search engine, I typed 108 Hiroshima. 108, which is 36 plus 36 plus 36, which is symbolic for 666, and God frequently repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. And the symbolic meaning of the number 36 in his signs is that it hints at 666, which is the number of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. And that is because 36 hints at 3 sixes, but also it is 6 times 6, and also 2 times 18, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6. And also the 36th triangular number is 666. And also 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 all the way up to 36 equals 666. And so anyway, 108 of the 123, okay, and number 123 is relevant because the 42nd semi-prime number is 123, and in Bible prophecy, the number 42 is associated with the Antichrist. All right, so let's start again. 108 of the 123 trams, which are trains, were destroyed by the atomic bomb in Hiroshima. The Okinawa Hiroshima bomb sign on December 2nd, which hinted at the area code 212, by the way, which is Manhattan, was the same day as the Dachau concentration camp sign and trapped planes in Munich sign due to a record 44, as in the 44th president, inches of snow. Okay, just to recap on that. There was the evacuation from, you need to watch the Okinawa Obama video, but Okinawa sounds like Obama, and there are 32 U.S. military bases on Okinawa. Obama in gematria equals 32, as does bomb, and Obama hints at bomb. And from Okinawa, the planes, the bombers, departed when they were on their way to drop the bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. All right, now the plane that was the sign, it was trapped because of the record storm in Munich caused havoc with all European flights across the continent and delays, but especially in Munich, which was shut down. And there were these private jets that were on their way, ironically, to the climate summit in the desert, the hot desert, but were trapped on the runways due to the ice and snow. And one of the planes, that's the iconic viral image, is of one of these jets with their nose of the plane in the air, looking like it's taking off, but it's covered in ice and snow. It's trapped. And that's because right near this airport, which is just north of Munich, is also the symbolic first Nazi concentration camp, Dachau, which was not only the first, and God uses firsts for his signs, but it was also the headquarters of the training for the concentration camp workers for the other concentration camps, etc. So it is the concentration camp, in other words. And that was also right near the airport. That's because God pointed to that, because what are people in concentration camps? They are people that are trapped, hence the trapped plane. In the 44, because of the Antichrist being the 44th president, inches of snow. Okay, it took some thought as to how train symbolism would connect. Today, the day I wrote this, I walked through the Jewish quarter of Krakow, coincidentally, by the way, because I had to do an errand there. It was a coincidence. And I didn't know this until after the day it ended. I didn't even know the coincidence that I was going through that day. Okay, so today I walked through the Jewish quarter in Krakow. I had an errand I needed to do there, and I hadn't been there in over a year. And when I was there, I went to the memorial, because I've walked through that area hundreds of times probably. Well, I don't know if that's an exaggeration, maybe though, and a couple hundred times. And anyway, I rarely go and read the thing. I wanted to take a picture of it that day. So I went to the monument that talks about the Jews that died in the ghetto in Krakow, 60-something thousand, if I recall. So that's also a coincidence because of what I'm talking about here. Okay, I coincidentally had to take a train to get to Krakow. I first read about the 108 Hiroshima tram trains on my phone as I was getting on the train at the beginning of the day. That was when I did the search, as I was waiting for the train. This was the day after, and I was trying to figure out what was the meaning of the signs. And I typed in the 108 and Hiroshima, and because of the 108 days connection. And sure enough, we came up with something that's historic about Hiroshima. There's a 108 involved in the Hiroshima bomb, and that's the 108 trams, which are trains that were destroyed. Okay? So let me just scroll here. By the end of the day, as I was getting back onto the train to go home, it hit me. Huge. Big epiphany. The Okinawa sign pointed to the 108 trains in the mass death in Hiroshima, and the Okinawa sign was on the same day as the trapped Dachau concentration camp sign, because this hints at the death trains to the Jewish concentration camps. Yeah, that's pretty astounding. Yeah, that's why these two signs occurred on the same day, 108 days before March 19th, which was a step in the trail of signs. Now, the prophetic signs that occurred on March 19th are explained in one of my most favorite videos on this channel, the Yankees bird strike video. Okay, that's the prediction of the time in which the Yankees, Dave Winfield, threw the ball at a seagull, killing it, and then was arrested. It was a bird strike, and it is predicted that Kamala Harris's plane will crash due to a bird strike, actually on the same day as the predicted dirty bombs, March 27th. So anyway, that video will explain the prophetic signs that occurred on March 19th, 108 days after the Okinawa and Dachau concentration camp sign. And again, those are explained way better than I just did in the must-watch Okinawa Obama video. Now, there was another prophetic bomb sign on February 24th. Okay, there was another explosion sign on February 24th. Unexplosive, was detonated outside the office of the Attorney General of Alabama. February 24th, again, as explained in other videos, hinted at Jesus because it hints at two 24s. And the 2424, as in 2424th word in Strong's Greek New Testament Concordance, is the name Jesus. And in Greek gematria, the name Jesus equals 888. Okay, and so this explosive outside of the Attorney General office of Alabama on the date that hints at Jesus, and Jesus hints at 888, it was 8 days after the Alabama Supreme Court ruled that embryos are children, are human life. Okay? That life begins at conception. And that date was 216, which hints at 216, which is 6 times 6 times 6. And the Antichrist was born on the 216th day of the calendar year. Now, 224 is 24 days, 8 plus 8 plus 8 days, before the predicted explosion in New York City on March 19th. And as I just explained, the signs on March 19th confirmed the analysis, and March 19th is 8 more days to the date of the predicted dirty bomb explosions in New York City, which will be on March 27th. Okay, so there's more to this though. But anyway, this is a prophetic explosion sign on the date we were expecting at a prophetic explosion sign. And that doesn't, if you're skeptical, first of all, when the prediction comes to pass, it'll prove everything that I'm saying, and then it will be irrational to be skeptical. But because I'm making this video before the prediction, if you are skeptical, please know that it's not every day that you have a an explosion sign. It's not every day you have an explosion in the news. Okay? So, but then to tie it in relevantly, because this is obviously Christianity here, it is the Christians that believe that life begins at conception. No one else believes that. And this is tied into the Antichrist number and the signs that the date and all that hint at Jesus, as I just explained. So that makes it relevant. But there's more to this, as I'll explain. But anyway, let's move on. We had another explosion sign. It's amazing. All right, the reason for the connections involving the church and the thing. Okay, so February 24th. Now, this is overlap here. You need to watch also the Trump wins the 8th state video. That's the bigger video regarding the prophetic signs that occurred on February 24th. I'm just isolating here the bomb signs that occurred on February 24th. I didn't include them in the Trump wins the 8th state video. Although in retrospect, come to think of it, I probably should have. Because it relates to Nikki Haley, which hints at the Nicolaitan doctrine, that Jesus said he hates and is coming to make war with the sword of his mouth, and those that teach and have the works that are a product of this doctrine, which today is widespread within the evangelical American Christian church. It is the dominant Protestant doctrine, regardless of denomination. This is because Augustine corrupted the church in the 4th century, and Augustine, was a Gnostic. That's why today's Christianity is Gnosticism. I'll explain. But he was a Gnostic, an official auditor in the Manichaean sect for 9 years before he joined the Catholic Church. His latter writings, not his first writings, but his later writings, were Gnostic. They were influenced by his Gnosticism. He corrupted the Western Church. Luther was an Augustinian monk. Calvin titled his writings Systematic Augustinianism. First of all, and of course, these are the two founders of the Protestant Reformation, right? Calvin, first of all, the Bible was never intended to be read and interpreted systematically, but that is what Christians do today because of Calvin and Luther. They isolate passages to prove their theology. But you cannot isolate passages. You need to know the passages in their context, and especially context within the Bible, not just context within the chapter. Because even if you read these passages often that the Gnostic Christians of today use to support their Gnostic doctrine, they won't even recognize the surrounding text that contradicts their interpretation. But, for example, Ephesians chapter 2, and you know what I'm talking about, the Calvinists listening to this. So anyway, and also Calvin disparaged the other church fathers, the ones in the 1st and 2nd century, the ones that knew one of the apostles or knew someone that did and spoke the original Greek. None of the early church fathers would agree with the current mainstream cultural doctrine of today, which was handed down to us through Augustine and Luther and Calvin. None of them. That's why it's very important to know what the early church fathers believed. And you will learn that none of them have the current theology. Okay, which is saved by faith alone. And I use that to ruffle feathers, to get people's attention. Because the only place that phrase occurs in the Bible is when James said, you see, a person is not saved by faith alone, but is justified by their works. And he gave the examples of Abraham and Rahab. And the Gnostics of today will talk about how Abraham was deemed righteous for believing, but there's two parts. Because then God tested Abraham's faith through his actions. Because faith is a doing. It is an action. It isn't an intellectual belief. And that's the thing. The Calvinists believe that you have to believe in Calvinism to be saved. And that's why their doctrine, you have to have, in other words, the average Christian today believes that you need to hold the correct intellectual belief in order to be saved. And that's why they squirm when they hear anything contradicting that, because they are feeling threatened that they might lose their salvation if they possibly might believe the wrong thing. And that's why it produces this phobia regarding works. The works that Paul was talking about were the works of the law, the works of the Moses law, not works like James is talking about, demonstration of one's faith. Because you see, God didn't know whether or not Abraham feared him as he told him after Abraham followed through with the command to sacrifice his son Isaac. Then God said, now I know. In other words, he didn't know beforehand. And that's another thing. God doesn't know everything ahead of time. He knows all possibilities, but we have free will, contrary to what the Calvinists say, that everything is predetermined, including who will and will not go to heaven, prior to their birth even. That's atrocious. But yet the average Christian believes this, because it's a natural consequence of the Gnostic theology that Augustine passed down. That the idea that everything is predetermined. If we have nothing to do in our salvation, everything is done by God. It's called sovereign grace. God does everything. He's responsible for every aspect of our salvation. And according to them, to say otherwise is a blasphemy. It's an affront to God. It's an insult to God. Sovereign grace. But this is the Gnostic Nicolaitan doctrine of our day that Jesus said he hates. Sovereign grace and free grace. God throws us the lifeline, but we have to grab on. We have to receive the gift. We have to actualize our faith. And this typically involves risk and sacrifice, which is the purpose of the mark of the Antichrist that is coming to America, because American Christians have had it very easy. They haven't had to demonstrate their faith. And that's the reason why the American church is the Laodicea church. Okay, so Calvinism and free grace both lead to once saved, always saved. They come in the packages of Calvinism and dispensationalism, and both lead to once saved, always saved. It is also the myth of imputed righteousness as evangelical Christians, American Christians understand it, and also our righteousness is as filthy rags, one verse that Luther took out of context in the book of Isaiah, twisted to support his entire theology. All Christians will be raptured, etc., quote-unquote Christians. People are saved past tense. No one is saved past tense. People are on the path to salvation. And the assurance, by the way, comes through the Holy Spirit that we are on the path to salvation. Okay. So anyway, back to what I was saying here. You need to watch the most important video if you are a Christian is the 23 church signs video. But make sure you also watch the Trump wins the 8th state video. That's the reason for the Nick sign here. God has overwhelmingly pointed to precisely what the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day is, and it is what I have just described. And that is the purpose of this prediction that is from God. Make no mistake, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove what I have just said. To not appreciate this is to miss entirely the point of this prediction. And this video and video channel, and like I say, you might as well turn off the video now. This prediction will prove that the vast majority of American Christians have Gnostic doctrine. Gnostic, meaning knowledge. To intellectually believe the correct thing is how one is saved. And so, okay, and believe me, I know far better than you why God has given this prediction and given me a voice through this prediction. It is to prove what I have just said. Now, getting back to what I was saying, actually, Abraham was tested of his faith, and his faith was demonstrated and actualized in Genesis chapter 22. And that's why Alabama, where this explosion happened, is the 22nd state. Okay? Now, the Alabama flag is a very simple flag. It is a white backdrop with a blood red cross. Okay? This is because the mark of the Antichrist, which is designed by God to test the faith of quote-unquote Christians, like Abraham was tested, the mark of the Antichrist is symbolized by the number 22. Because the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist would have been the Tav mark in the book of Ezekiel. And the Tav letter is the last letter in the Hebrew alphabet and the 22nd letter. The mark of the Antichrist is described in the last book of the Bible, which is the 22nd book out of 22 books in the Bible that have a total of 22 chapters. All right. Now, so the mark gives a person blood disease. It's the thing. The thing is the mark. And it isn't a supposed precursor to the mark of the Antichrist. And the prediction being made in this video will prove this. That's the purpose of this prediction. It does not need it is the mark of the Antichrist in its current form. It does not need an additional something to go with it, such as an additional technology or a false form of religious worship or a supposed new age of dispensation supposedly after all quote-unquote Christians will be raptured. In fact, one of the main reasons why most quote-unquote Christians have already taken the mark of the Antichrist is that it is in fact judgment for this particular doctrine of dispensationalism, which leads to free grace. And once saved, always saved. Okay, so, yeah. So that's why we have this explosion sign in the 22nd state, the state that has the red cross, which is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, because the thing gives us blood disease. And by the way, the commonly held objections that people have based on their understanding of Bible prophecy regarding the mark of the Antichrist as to why it couldn't be the mark of the Antichrist, I answer these commonly held objections in the must-watch snake bite video on this channel. Okay? But when the prediction comes to pass, you will know that your understanding of your interpretations of the mark of the Antichrist are incorrect. That's the purpose of the prediction, is to prove this. This is how prophecy works. I know better than you why God has given this prediction. It is to prove what I have just said regarding the identification of the mark of the Antichrist. By the way, nowhere in the Bible does it say that one cannot repent after taking the mark of the Antichrist. So, the vast majority the majority anyway of Christians have taken the mark of the Antichrist, but quote-unquote Christians, I should say. And anyway, the explosion was at the office of the Attorney General because of the Alabama Supreme Court's ruling. This is the terrorist that did this because of the Supreme Court's ruling that embryos are human life on the date that hints at the Antichrist, which is a confirmation of this being an Antichrist sign. And this isn't the only instance, God uses Alabama, the 22nd state with the red cross on it, as symbolism for the mark of the Antichrist. That's the reason. That's what's going on here. That's why Alabama in this sign here. Okay, and then and that Alabama sign, which was the ruling of the embryos being human life, was on the date that hints at 6 times 6 times 6. In other words, God has communicated that the CVD thing and all things, by the way, are a spiritual abomination because they all use in their development embryonic things from babies, lines of cells from babies in their development. That's what God has communicated here. I hope that I explained that. I hope you got that. God pointed to Alabama, the 22nd state with the blood red cross on it, mark of the Antichrist, thing that gives one blood disease. And this all happened because of the Supreme Court's ruling on what I just talked about. I have to use my words carefully, right? The babies, right? The murder of unborn babies is what we're talking about here. That's a main reason why the thing is the mark of the Antichrist. And all is coming to light at the end here, and the corruption in the thing industry is coming to light. But what's also come to light for a lot of people now is that all things have been a lie. All of them are a lie. None of them work. If you don't know that yet, you need to do some more research. You need to learn some more. None of them have worked. They're not responsible for eliminating diseases in the past. That's a lie. And they cause far more health problems than they are supposedly preventing. But they're all spiritual abominations, all of them. God is not pleased with any of them. Got it? Okay. Again, on the day of the explosion in the 22nd state, which hints at the mark, with its blood red cross, the Dow was at 39,131. This is amazing because Jesus' blood on the cross was from the 3rd hour to the 9th hour, hence the 39,000. The 131st word in Strong's Greek Concordance is the word blood disease, which is what one gets when they take the mark which is why the Dow was at this number on the day of this explosion sign in the 22nd state that has a flag with a red cross on it. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the BitChute.com or the Odyssey.com channel. And do it now in case you aren't able to later.